The background footage was taken from two recent sessions where I found people basically to earn the online achievements for these games. The first being 3D Ultra Mini Golf Adventures for the 360, and then I found a group to finish the hardest difficulty in arcade in a newer game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. The gameplay is not important at all, it's just there for background noise. But both games illustrate different aspects of stuff I'm going to talk about. Plus, I think the TMNT footage is kind of funny because it shows how incredibly scuffed the process can be of doing this online stuff. I love achievements in games. People who know me would probably say I love achievements more than I love games themselves, and they might be correct, depending. To expand on that, since I was a kid, I always gravitated towards getting, that shiny 100% completion in any game I could. I didn't get an Xbox 360 until like a few years after it launched, but I was obsessed with the idea of hunting achievements and racking up a completely fictional numerical score, kind of as a metagame on top of the games themselves. To this day, I still focus on getting achievements, but way more than hunting achievements for that score or for the numbers. I really still just love completing games. I love saying, for what it's worth, for this achievement list, I have everything, I've done everything. I really still get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And I'm proud of the list of games that I've mastered over the years. I'm not really here to brag about that, but if you read the title of this video, you probably know where I'm going with this. If you know any achievement freaks like me, you've probably heard the collective disdain for multiplayer achievements. On the surface, the reason's pretty obvious. Nobody likes relying on other people, let alone strangers. There's a reason people hated group projects in high school. There's a reason, democratic elections turn into a civil war of idolatry. It adds so many layers of additional complication when you have to have multiple people across the globe working in tandem, coordinating complicated tasks through an Xbox Live party chat. It can be tough. It can be frustrating. But I think there's more to it than that. I don't think people get into the minutia of why multiplayer achievements are problematic enough. Of course, many people have, but there's been a few things that happened recently in culture and in my life that have just made me think about this topic a lot and made me want to maybe go a little bit more in depth, be a little bit unnecessarily dramatic. So that's what this completely non-essential video is. Hypothetically, what is the goal when a developer creates an achievement list for their game? I'm not a developer, full disclosure, so I'm just going to have to take a guess. Half of the time, I think they are purely an afterthought. And that is not a bad thing. It has become such a standard that every single game has achievements. I think it's even partially a requirement to be on the Xbox store. I could be wrong about that. But sometimes you can tell that a developer really did make an effort to curate like a well-balanced, enjoyable list of achievements for their game. And for the purposes of my question, I'm going to attempt to answer it with these people in mind. The purpose of an achievement list is to force players to engage with all of the content in their game in some meaningful way. Not only is that a fair goal, it's a goal I respect, and part of the satisfaction that I've always gotten from seeing, that 50 out of 50 achievements, or the Platinum Trophy, It's knowing that you accomplished everything that the developers explicitly set out for you as a challenge, typically. They thought it was important enough to add a little dopamine pop-up for this little task in-game. So why doesn't every game avoid multiplayer achievements, despite the fact that they bother certain groups of people? Because like it or not, and I don't, for the record, multiplayer achievements do serve this purpose as much as any other type of achievements. They force people to engage with content that they worked on, meaning multiplayer game modes, which are pretty common last time I checked. At least in the last, 15 years of gaming, they've been pretty important. But here's the issue. Engaging with content is very much up for interpretation, and some achievement lists go above and beyond to make it clear that they expect you to play their game for the rest of your life. And not only that, but some of them want you to be so unbelievably talented that you have a shot at esports fame. If you want me to play every game mode, maybe get some headshots, try every class, try some abilities, play or win a certain amount of games, I might not be happy about it, but it's completely valid for an achievement list to ask that of me as the player, to at least, try the multiplayer and give it a shot. Let's talk about a couple games that I've played personally that take it way too far to illustrate this point a little bit. Firstly, there are games like Friday the 13th, the game, which, in my opinion, is such a gem. I love that game dearly. I have played it for hundreds of hours with my friends, had a blast, despite it not being very good, quote-unquote, good. The achievement list, if you look at it on paper, is pretty simple. It's actually just like, do X number of tasks that you would do playing normally. The problem is that what it asks is not the issue, it's how many. Once you start playing the game, you realize just how nasty of a task playing 1,000 games as Jason is going to be. It's going to take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours without boosting because of how the game works and how it is asymmetrical 1 versus 7 counselors. I think that's right. Just because the achievements look simple, and they are thematically, when you inflate the numbers so much that it will take you the rest of your life to earn them, that's a problem of padding. It happens more often when a game is multiplayer only, but regardless of why it happens, that's an issue. How about another game with an achievement list that truly gets under my skin? Call of Duty World at War. Most people know that game, besides the fact that it's a Call of Duty game and everyone on Earth knows it, most people know that game for its absolutely punishing veteran campaign. That's one piece of the achievement list. Zombies is another piece, which is hard. If you want to get every achievement, well, you have to reach 10th Prestige. Oh, and what's that? Screenshot that I just put up on the screen for all of us to view. If you look at my personal log of this game, it looks like I have all the gamer score, but I don't have all the achievements. Why is that? Oh. That's why. So not only is that ridiculously time-consuming, but it's also blatantly disrespectful. Not a huge deal, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. You also have games like Titanfall. Same thing, you have to get to the max rank, which is technically 10th Prestige. But because there's no single-player component of the game at all, it is just 50, 60, 70 achievements of pure gaming skill and hundreds of hours of grinding that requires more than just dedication. It requires legitimate talent in some regards. And finally, I'll talk about everyone's favorite. I think everybody by now knows the extremely infamous achievements in Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. I'll throw them up here on the screen because they're marvelous. Ultimately, do these things matter? That these are unreasonable, unattainable achievement lists? No. Or, I guess it depends. Games don't last forever. No matter how popular a game is, at its peak, it cannot maintain relevance indefinitely. Unless you do something very specific. You port the game onto every existing platform out there, and you also allow for radical user customization so that they do the work for you. Basically, you are Minecraft. Where does this leave nearly every other game? A slow death on the hardware they were born. The first system that ever had achievement functionality came out nearly 18 years ago as of the time I am recording this. It is a miracle that any game from that era still has surviving servers. But I think we're kind of reaching a point of no return, where those are going to start disappearing too. Recently I was doing a deep dive through my backlog, or, more accurately, I would really call it a graveyard of my unfinished games. And I was a little surprised by how many of them are no longer possible because of server shutdowns just in the past few years. Like, just coming right to mind, without any in front of me, several of the original Assassin's Creed games had multiplayer, and those servers are just dead. And I never finished those because a million reasons. Same reason anybody abandons any multiplayer game. They're done playing it. That kind of thing doesn't keep me up at night because of my own completion percentage or any of that stuff. That doesn't actually matter to me in the grand scheme. But there were enough of these games that I noticed from the 360 era that made me kind of realize that it's coming to an end in a big way. Collectors know this because physical games are actually starting to get quite expensive for the 360. And that's notable because historically Xbox 360 games have been the cheapest on the market. If you wanted to collect for the system in the past few years, it's an accessible system to collect for, always has been. That's starting to change, and it's not a coincidence. If a game has significant portions that are reliant on multiplayer and online platforms, then the second your game releases, there is a ticking clock. It will not be popular forever. The servers will shut down. Now, the bright side to this specific console generation is that nearly all 360 games were released physically. The exception obviously being arcade games digitally, but even some of the big ones were released physically. What is my point in all this? Where am I going? I will get there. I brought up Friday the 13th because of the achievement list. But the real reason I brought it up is because this is a very modern game, came out in 2017, and they just very recently announced that the servers are officially shutting down in 2024. As I said before, I love that game. I still do, despite all its horrible flaws. But it's sad because it's hard for me to grapple with the game just disappearing. Now, I know what you're saying. There are physical copies of that game. But if a game is online only and the server's shut down, it doesn't matter if I own it digitally or on a disc. The game ceases to exist. I brought up Titanfall and I brought up World at War as very different examples because those games might literally have working servers forever at this point. Activision probably lost their key to the World at War server room, and now they just begrudgingly, pay the tiny cost every month because they don't even know what money is anymore. They just print it with Warzone skins. But the difference with those is they might be around forever, but nobody is ever going to want to play them except for one specific group of people. Achievement hunters. Whether you just like completing your backlog, or you are faced with the terror of a game just disappearing into the ether while you have 49 out of 50 achievements permanently branded on your profile forever, it's a group of people that are specifically and very uniquely in touch with the impermanence of gaming as a medium. If you notice that a game like 3D Ultra Mini Golf Adventures from 2007 has a couple multiplayer achievements, and by some amazing grace of God, still has working multiplayer servers, and you know that nobody on planet Earth is playing the game naturally, what do you do before it slips into the void forever? You find other weird people on magical LFG sites, and you coordinate a session. And also, I have to say, anecdotally, I have never, in my long career of doing this stupid stuff, I have never had a bad experience on sites like True Achievements, PSN profiles. They might possibly be the least toxic parts of humanity. They're just like ultra nerds with one common goal, and they're gonna fight side by side with you to get it. I've had so many amazingly positive experiences doing this. So what's the solution? And why should anybody, let alone game developers, prioritize a balanced and accessible achievement list over any other of their million important issues they gotta deal with? Simply put, they shouldn't. Blah blah blah, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Blah blah blah. I am not asking for radical solutions, nor am I implying that this is an issue that matters to the majority of the gaming audience that probably feel pretty neutral about arbitrary achievements in their video games. Even if that sentiment hurts my feelings, that's just how it goes. So, I'm simply speaking as somebody who has a personal stake in this little niche subculture of gaming. I think a solution already exists, and it just hasn't been utilized. Here's my thoughts on the matter, briefly. If your game has a sizable amount of content related to multiplayer, your achievement list is going to reflect that. There's no getting around that. My first suggestion would be that the achievements need to be accessible, and before anybody is bothered by that statement, I don't mean easy. What I mean is that they should be obtainable by people who are not literally the best in the world, and they should be obtainable by people who have jobs and maybe even families. Like, there needs to be some thought put into how hard a competitive game's achievement should be and how long they should take. If your game is good, people will play it. You don't need to add achievements for a certain group of people just to frustrate them with how long they take. How about instead of requiring 1,000 matches played as Jason in Friday the 13th, you require them play 50? It'll still take a long time, but if they like the game, they'll probably play enough to get 50 matches in. How about instead of requiring 10th Prestige in World at War, you just don't? That's an option too. Any achievement list that tries to reach some cross-section in the middle here is fair, and it's fine. But let's say hypothetically that as the developer, you are committed to having a painfully long and time-consuming grind, the absolute least thing you can do is create an option to earn these things offline. Single player, whatever you want to call it. That way, when your game figuratively or literally dies, people who love the game but have been barred from playing multiplayer or any number of things, honestly your most dedicated fans, they'll still have a chance to engage with the content the way they want, and still work for those, hard-earned achievements. Just because they didn't play on opening night doesn't mean they should, be any of these things should be negated. If that kind of mentality creates, let's say it creates exploits for grubby little achievement hunters like me to sink their teeth into, that's just a side effect, and it doesn't hurt anybody. It just gives us all our own little thing to focus on. I think having more options in a game and in life is typically a good thing. There is actually one example of this I have in mind before I, get off this dramatic little soapbox. When Destiny 2 released, there was an achievement tied to the very first raid in the game. And as so many years have gone by, they started to vault old content for various reasons as a necessary side effect of trying to keep a game as a live service going forever. To my absolute shock, they changed that achievement so that now it's tied to Nightfall strikes, which are something that no matter what kind of content's in the game, there will always be a weekly Nightfall. So you can do this achievement today, 6-7 years after it came out, because they changed it and they changed the criteria. I can honestly say that I can't think of any other examples that I've ever seen of that happening. And yes, it is a lot to ask of developers to do that thing and to constantly keep up achievement lists. And I'm not asking for that kind of meticulous, overarching, mentality, but what Bungie did with that tiny little thing is so brilliant, and it so gracefully captures what I think should be done about multiplayer achievements, personally. In the grand scheme of things, though, achievements are only important to a small select group of people, to the extent that I'm talking about. Whether this issue that I'm talking about has a solution or not is barely pertinent at all. I could continue rambling about other aspects, like paid DLC adding new achievements, which is actually something that PlayStation nailed with their Platinum Trophy criteria, only counting the main game and not considering later additions. That's a great idea. But the reason I actually think this topic matters is because media is extremely finite. To some extent, yeah, everything is. But art in the technological age is at a risk of becoming extinct, like nothing really ever has. We still have old-ass paintings from 500 plus years ago, and it isn't because they're indestructible. They're not. It's because people cared enough to preserve them. But here we have Friday the 13th, the game. It's technically going to be gone after a 7-year lifespan because it's a multiplayer-only game, losing the multiplayer part. That's pretty hard to work around, physical release or not. Recently, we just saw the Wii U Online store shut down. And by the way, I highly, highly, highly recommend Gerard the Completionist's video on that. It's a great video. The PS3 store has been making it increasingly difficult to even use, signaling the end there. The 360 store, stuff gets delisted here and there. Xbox is a little bit better about backwards compatibility than anybody else, but these are all moving toward a very inevitable conclusion. Streaming services have swallowed the movie and TV industry, and now original content that has never had a physical release can just vanish overnight. Piracy is unironically becoming art preservation for the greater good, whether the law likes it or not. Achievements in video games are just one tiny, minuscule piece of this. But it's something I've always been passionate about. Someday, the only part of Friday the 13th, the game, that I will still have access to is the memories. And we all know how flawless human memory is, especially over long stretches of time. Actually, it's not entirely true. I will have one other thing. I'll have a permanent reminder on my Microsoft account that I only got 47 out of 52 achievements in the game, because I never got around to setting up boosting sessions with strangers before it was too late. Interesting. Hi there. If you made it this far into the video, and you're not one of my close friends or family, I just want to say I really appreciate you, and I feel the need to really apologize for how scuffed the audio is, and the complete lack of editing is, and the fact that I recorded that voice over in one take. This is my first video. I'm really just messing around. This is always something I've wanted to do for fun, and no, I don't have the setup, or the mic, or the camera, or the budget, but I'm just trying to get out of my comfort zone and do something that I think would be fun. And already I've had a good time doing this, so no matter what, if you made it this far, once again, I just want to thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day. If I entertained you, I guess be on the lookout for other videos. I still don't know what my goal is. I'm gonna obviously do something related to gaming content, but I like a lot of things, not just gaming, so who knows? We'll just have to find out. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.